Have you ever wanted to write a book or sell books on Amazon? This is the podcast for you. Today we talk to a visionary who knows how to get you to the #1 bestseller on Amazon. My name is Stephen Pope, and this is the My Amazon Guy podcast. I'm now joined by Violette, who's an award-winning book and business coach, multiple #1 bestseller author, podcast host, and CEO of Create and a Splash Marketing and Grammy-nominated songwriter. So that you have been around the gauntlet of book writing. That's awesome.
Yes, I have.
Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of Amazon sellers out there that will appreciate what you have to say today, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, cool, Ellen. So you have brought a book to Amazon, and many people are probably intellectuals out there. They've thought, "Hey, I should write a book," or maybe they have, and they just don't know what to do with it. Let's start with kind of like where do I get started with this kind of stuff?
Well, the best way to get started is to think about this before you write your book. And of course, most people don't, but I want to tell people that because now that you're hearing this, hopefully you will do that in the future. And right? And the reason I say that is because when you do the research first and you know what your keywords are, and you know who your ideal audience is, and you know what it is you need to write in order to move your business forward, then, and also how to position it within Amazon, it gives you information that you can use that is going to help you write the book that you want to write in order to do whatever it is that your goal is with the book. So a lot of times people don't even think about that. They don't think about what's my strategy with this book. They just go, oh, I'm going to write a book, right?
And so let's say I was going to write a book about how to sell better on Amazon. So I would go in there and I'd use tools to look at keywords. And hey, I know that the #1 thing people ask about is how do I advertise better on Amazon? So I would probably want to focus a portion of my book about advertising, right? So I can see where you're coming from on this concept. And so how would I flush this out further?
Well, like I said, this is the first step, and I do want to make it really clear that if you haven't done this and you have a book, at any point you can go back and do this. It's not like once you mess this up, you're screwed. It's not like that, because you can always change keywords, you can always change categories, and sometimes you can even change your title. I had a woman who came to me and she thought her book was about death, and it wasn't. It was actually about the afterlife. And she was lucky because we were able to just change one word and keep everything else the same. So that's just the one thing I wanted to say. Now tell me again what your question was.
No. So we're just getting started trying to figure out, how to get a book going. So you mentioned do some research, which seems obvious, but may not be to, somebody who's already done their book, or they're like, okay, well, I've already got a book. What do I do? And so we're going through this kind of made up book on how to get better at selling on Amazon. So we do some research. We think about, okay, I know that the most common question is related to ads. The second most common question might be related to keywords and SEO. And the third most common question might be logistics. So we've got our base of the book.
Right. But the question is, are there other books on that topic? And if there are other books on the topic, what do they cover? And are you going to add something new to the conversation? Do you have a step-by-step system for doing it? What is it that makes your book different? So when somebody goes to Amazon, they're looking at the different books, what's going to make them go, I want yours? I want that one. And that is so important. And there's so many things that go into that. And like I said, one is knowing what your audience wants to learn, knowing what's not already out there, knowing what is already out there. And then how do you write your title, write your subtitle, and also understand what it is you offer that's different. So that makes a big difference. And then you want it to be, I hate to use this word, but you want it to be sexy or juicy. You want it to emotionally connect with them. And that's the other thing. A lot of times what people will do is they actually, especially in their subtitles, they'll talk about the features. And people don't care about the features. They want to know what the benefit is.
You mean my glossy pages, 500-page textbooks, not sexy for you?
No, not sexy. No.
So,
Yeah.
So you mentioned features. So what would be, and you could talk about one of your books. We don't have to use my made up book idea. What would be a good feature to tout?
There isn't a good feature to tell. We don't want to tell features. We want to tell benefits. It's
like,
what are
I got it backwards. I apologize. Thank you. see, if I can mess it up, and I just heard you say it, I imagine authors mess it up all the time. So walk me through that then. How would I explain? How would somebody want to, let's say, impact that to the buyer, the reader?
Right. Well, it comes down to making it sound exciting. So what do people want? They want to save time, they want to save money, they want to save energy, and it depends. I mean, every niche is different, it depends on your audience. So part of it is you have to know your audience. So one of the things that is so important is talking to your audience. Like, right, once you've decided who your audience is, and I know if people are just starting out, it's hard a lot of times to figure out who your ideal audience is. But what you have to do, or what I did, I should just say from my own experience, is I just worked with a lot of people. I worked with whoever wanted to work with me, that made sense. And so as I did that, I discovered who I liked working with and who I didn't like working with. And so then over time, it becomes more solidified and clearer as to who you want to work with. So, but then the other thing that's really cool is if you can even get, a few 100 people on your list, even if you have any list at all, or a community or whatever, where you can actually reach out and say, would you be willing to have a conversation with me? I'm doing some marketing research, and talk to those people who are your ideal clients. They'll tell you. And the thing that's so cool about when they talk to you is you're also hearing their language. So in other words, the way you say it may not be the way they would say it. And you want to write your subtitle, if you can, the way they would say it, not the way you would say it.
I think that really is a solid takeaway, because a lot of times technocrats and experts, they have their acronyms and their technical, and the way that they translate that information, it loses like 80% of the audience in like 2 sentences.
Oh yeah, I love what Russell Brunson calls it, technobabble.
Technobabble, I love that.
The minute you go into technobabble, the mind just like drifts off. You've lost them.
What do you mean you don't want to learn about my SEO, PPC, and FBA right. and SFP? And let me just think of like 20 more Amazon acronyms while I'm at it.
Right.
So all right. So people who are ready to write a book, we talked about the research and the thought process beyond it. But before they commit, I think the number one question people might ask is, what's my goal? And can I make a profit selling books on Amazon?
Right. I don't even think people ask, what's my goal? I think they just say, can I make money?
And well, for some, it might not be making money off the profits or the proceeds of the book. It might be to get clients, right?
Right.
Hey, if you get in front of them, you're going to be more likely to sell them because they can see you're qualified, right?
Right.
But
I think people, how they think about it really depends a lot on where they are in their business. Like when people come to me, a perfect example is I had somebody come to me and he really wanted to speak on stage. And he felt that by not having a book, that was hindering him from doing that. So his goal was to write that book to get on stage. And within 6 weeks of us doing a bookseller launch, he was on stage. So, but a lot of times when people are more at the beginning, or they're like in transitioning where they have to make money, and they come in and they think, oh, I have to make money, so I'm going to write a book. That is not a great strategy, in my opinion.
So books can sell anywhere from $5 to $50, right? And so anything under 15, profit margins are tight, right? Like tight in general on Amazon, but what's your thoughts on book profit margins?
Well, again, it depends on how you think about it. Like when I first started, we were selling books for $29 to $47.
Sure.
And we would send out a couple of emails and make 12 grand. So compared to that, Kindle sucks. Okay. but compared to what you would get with a traditional publishing deal, it's great. I'm a huge proponent of self-publishing, because being in the music business for many years and seeing how poorly the creative people were treated, and you can't have a hit without a good song. So, but you get paid like 10 cents a record, and the producer and the artist and everybody else was making millions of dollars off of this. And so that was why when I got into book writing, I was like, one of the things that attracted me to it in the first place was when I discovered ebooks, because this was 2004. It was still, in a way it was relatively new. In another way, people were saying, oh, ebooks are already dead. And this was before Kindle. So
a lot of people, what's this internet thing? Nobody's going to use emails.
Right. Pretty bizarre.
Same concept. People reject technology before it's even preliminarily adopted. I get it.
Yeah. So in that sense, I was always a proponent of self-publishing because I wanted to keep control, and I wanted to make as much money as I could or use it however I wanted to use it. And then, of course, once Kindle came in, I love doing book launches on Amazon where we actually give books away. And I know a lot of authors are like, oh, I worked so hard on my book, I'm not giving it away. But, if you look at how internet marketing works, people want value before they want to pay you, because they want to know that you're good at what you do. They want to know that they're getting something for their money. So giving books away is a really great way to do that, because it's a low cost, high value proposition. And at the same time, it gives you a lot of credibility, expert status, and there's a lot you can do with it. But as I said, a lot of people don't want to give their books away. So when you do a Kindle bestseller launch, the cool thing is you're giving the ebook away, but you're not giving the print book away. And people still will pay you for print books. And not only that, but the way that we do it, like if you put your book in KDP, you can give it away for free for 5 days out of every 90 days if it's exclusive. And again, we're only talking the ebook, not the book. You can still be, putting the book into Ingram Spark or somewhere else on your website, whatever you want to do with it. So, and what we do is we just do 2 days, but it's how we do it. How we do it is more important.
Is that giveaway part of how you get to number one status, or what's the goal on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes people a number one bestseller. And the funny thing about that is too, actually, I don't think it's funny. I kind of think it's sad, but people downplay the benefits of Amazon bestsellers. Like, it was free. Oh, it was just for an hour. Oh, whatever. But let me tell you, first of all, the general public doesn't know what that means. And so, when you can say I'm a number one bestseller, it does open doors. And it also, what happens is, if you do it right, you can get on the hot new release list. And when you get on the hot new release list, then your book shows up within the top 10, and that gets you even more visibility. And the other thing is that so many authors, when they come to me at least, they have no list. They have no email list, or they have very little email list, maybe 100 people. And so they need to be building their lists. And so you can use the bestseller launch to build your list. So there are all these other benefits besides just making it a number one bestseller, and they all work together. And that's why I think they're really powerful, and I love doing them.
I think one of the most important things you articulated is you got to add value to people before you expect cash payout, right?
Right.
And so audience building before you monetize it, that sounds like a pretty awesome idea, actually.
Right. Well, that's another tip is, if once you know who your market is, doing the research that we already talked about, if you then set up like an advance notice group or a, beta, looking for beta readers or something, where you start building the list before you ever get even the book written. Look at movies. They start advertising 2 years in advance. So as soon as you're going to write a book, if you start doing that, then you're not only going to have more people on your list, but you're going to start building in your evangelists, people who, because you have time to nurture them, so they get to know you better, and if you do it right, you get them excited about it, and then they tell other people, and that's great.
So let's talk successes and mistakes. So walk me through a successful project. What did that look like? And then let's talk about some mistakes I've learned along the way to help some of our listeners avoid them.
Well, first of all, I've been very blessed, because when I went into Kindle right in the beginning, I just took to it immediately. I got it right away. And so all my books have been number one bestsellers that I've done that process with when I didn't have time to do it. So I didn't do that one. But, and all my clients are number one bestsellers. We guarantee it, as long as they, do the entire process. And so, I would just say that the hardest thing is sometimes getting people to trust that you know what you're talking about when they are, what's the word I'm looking for? They've already convinced themselves of going one way, and then when you try to tell them something else, they can't change.
Sure.
They become uncoachable.
Preconceived notions.
Yeah, preconceived notions. So that's a big problem. But, or sometimes I'll say to them, look, they may be in a niche that is not something I'm familiar with. And I'll say to them, look, you need to get more opinions from people that are in your niche. And they're like, well, what do you think? And I say, well, this is, or, I say, this is what I think, but I'm just one person, so I can guide people, but it doesn't mean I'm always the last arbiter here. It depends on, what niche it is and how familiar I am with it and all that sort of thing. So it just depends. But we've had just amazing success stories. I've had people, I had one guy who did a launch with us. He actually stayed on the bestseller list for 3 years with that book.
Nice.
Yeah, he went to a conference and flashed his book because his intention was to meet Kevin Harrington. Kevin saw the book cover, loved it, brought him up on stage. They talked for like 45 minutes, and the way he tells it, he took all the air out of the room. Wow. And Kevin became his mentor, and then he got offered to speak in Singapore, which was a lifelong dream of his. And he was already working with big companies, but now he's been able to raise his rates even more. And he's doing great. As a matter of fact, we're talking on Friday. He's getting ready to do another book and wants us to do that book. So
what you're saying is that books can open doors in ways maybe not foreseeable by other methods.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have another client who got a magazine cover right away, and she's had people to offer to work with her based on that, because of that, with other magazine offers. I have another woman who just thought she was too old, and, the whole thing had passed her by.
Yeah, you're just getting started. You're halfway done.
Well, and one of the things I always like to say is the older you are, the more wisdom you have to share.
Absolutely.
So, you're never too old to write a book. But, and then I have another client who we did her book, and a publicist saw it on Twitter and picked it up, didn't charge her, which I still don't understand how that worked out. But she became one of the top 100 entrepreneurs of that year on Twitter, and she came in at number 30, and he got her like 260,000 followers.
That's incredible.
So yeah, so you don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you for sure things happen when you write books.
Things happen when you write books. All right, I'm gonna put that on the tombstone. That's good.
Yeah, I have another client who went on to speak on stage before Barack Obama, and there's a picture of him, standing with him after they both spoke at the event. So
I used to be a television.
Lots of cool things.
I used to be a television reporter, and I covered Obama and Biden visiting Yellowstone, and I got to meet Fonzie as he left the Obama airplane, and he told a really funny joke. I've since forgotten it, but he got some Air Force M&Ms. So it's always kind of fun to run into celebrities or other leaders of the world. Cool. So that's a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, and then you also said the mistakes.
Yes. So I was just about to transition there. I was like, those are some great successes. It doesn't get better than meeting Kevin Harrington or Obama. Like, I don't know. I don't think we're going to beat that on today's podcast. So let's go mistakes. So whatever you're willing to reveal, what mistakes should people avoid, and what was the impact of that?
Oh boy, I have so many. So many. I would be lying if I said it's been a joyride, because it has been up and down and up and down. And I will say that when I started, I think people were lying a lot more about what internet marketing and entrepreneurship is than they do now. I think people are much more honest now. When I started, it was like, oh, you're going to be sitting on a beach 24/7, making money hand over fist.
Automated income, sure.
Yeah. And it's not like that. But anyway, the first coaching program I ever took was with Alex Mandosian, and it was called Teleseminar Secrets. We didn't have video in those days. We didn't have blogs. We didn't have social media. And but I was very coachable, and I did everything he told me to do, and I started making money very quickly. And what I did was I didn't create an ebook from scratch, but I actually had a coach teaching me how to coach, because Alex said the money's in the coaching, teaching what's in the book. And so I did that. And he had a book, And I saw that I could make his book better. And so I went to him and I said, can I become a co-writer on this and improve this book? And he said, no, I don't want to do that. You just take it and do what you want. So that's what I did. And then what I did with that was I gave it away and I invited people to a 2-part teleseminar. And today that is called a masterclass. Okay. In those days, I called it a 2-part teleseminar. And so I gave that.
Masterclass is sexier though.
Yeah.
A little bit.
In those days, nobody was saying that. So, but people were hungry for information in those days. And so I was able to show how much I knew. And believe me, I knew way less than I know now. I mean, this was, almost 16 years ago. But I knew about ebook writing. I had learned enough that I could see what people weren't teaching well. And there was a place for me. And I also saw at that point, there really weren't even any coaches who were coaching. There was a book, there was an e-course, but there were no coaches. And so I was very fortunate that at that time, there was a very famous internet marketer who is now passed on, named Mark Hendricks. And Mark created this giveaway called the 12 Days of Christmas. And he got 77 people to give a bonus. And so everybody was marketing. And my list went from like 200 people from offline networking to 1,600 people, like in 2 weeks. And I was instantly in business. I created my first program. It was called, in those days, it was called the Quick Start 3-Day Ebook Authoring Workshop. And within 7 days, I taught people how to write a book. And at the time, I was so depressed because I only got 2 people in the first one. But after it was over, I was grateful because they told me what I didn't know, what the part I wasn't doing right yet. And so I went back and fixed that. And then I continued to teach it. And one of the mistakes I made was I didn't raise the price fast enough. So, I mean, it was a really low price for too long. That was the first mistake that I made. But then people said, okay, well, we want to learn marketing. And so then I put together a marketing class. And again, I did this right. The pieces that I didn't know, I hired other people to come in. I didn't hire them. I gave them the opportunity to come in and work with me. Mari Smith, Craig Prine, Paul Colligan, some really great people. And anyway, it was a 10-week course. And I was told, well, market the course first, get the money, and then create the course. Oh my God, that was a nightmare.
Was it a little bit of rush to market?
Oh God, it took me 7 months to put it together. Everybody was mad at me. It was horrifying, and it was stressful. And I remember just having pages and pages strewn on the floor, trying to figure out how to put this thing together. Oh, it was just such a mess. And now I do not do that. It's like if I'm doing a course, it has to be at least 3/4 done before I'm going to ask people to pay me for it. That's another mistake. And then what happened was the 2008 recession hit. So by 2009, it was more of a struggle. And I lost half my coaching business. And
that's brutal.
Yeah. But I also, a lot of things started happening in my mind. I mean, first of all, I got very ill in 2008. Again, I'd almost died in 2000, which was before I even started my business. But I got ill again, and that was hard. And I kept working through it. It did not stop me. And, but a lot of other things did. And it was a lot of mindset stuff, because I was getting burned out on the way I was running my business. And
people are going to resonate with this part a lot, because business burnout, especially post-COVID world where all stresses are all high, a lot of stuff's going on, illness and otherwise. So how I'm really interested in this part. And I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to emphasize how this is going to resonate.
That's okay. So, what ended up happening was that I started struggling. Because I didn't know, things were going south and I didn't know how to fix it. And I ended up, I had inherited some jewelry from my mom. I had a beautiful 2.5 diamond ring, my wedding ring. I had to sell everything just to stay in business. I could actually get really emotional about this, but anyway, so
heirlooms matter.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll even lay at night and I'll think, why did I sell that one? I just wish I had that one. Or, there were a couple that I wish I had not sold. But I was always optimistic. It was like, oh, well, I'll make the money and I'll buy them back. Well, that didn't happen. But anyway, and they were one of a kind, so it's not like I could go buy another one. But anyway, so I I just kept trying. I mean, I just kept persisting. I just kept trying. I kept doing my workshops. Oh, by the way, I got to a 6-figure income in 2.5 years before 2008. It was just that after 2008, then it then it was like 70, 80,000, and it started going down rather than up. And then, but I was trying to like get passive income. I mean, I was doing some affiliate marketing and different things, but I wanted more passive income. I didn't want to work as hard. I was tired. I was sick, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And so I just kept, but I never gave up. I just kept trying things. And so, but what I didn't understand was my mindset was screwed up. It was like I felt entitled. I felt like I've worked really hard. I should be doing better. I felt like I'd been lied to, and rather than just accepting that and moving on, I was bitter about that. And I can remember being on one of my webinars, and I was doing it with some friends of mine, and they said, "You sounded angry on this call."
Wow.
And it was like, I am angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. And, but like I said, I never gave up, and I just kept going. I kept changing things. And then something really interesting happened in 2013 was when, I mean, Kindle had been there for quite a while at that point, but I hadn't really been using it. And then people were saying they wanted to do #1 bestseller, launches. And also it got to the point where it's like, well, now you needed the ranking. Like if I was doing it on my website, there was no ranking, right? So I couldn't prove my results that way. So I said, okay, well, I better figure this out. So anyway, that's when I did that. So I started doing #1 bestseller launches, and like I said, 100% success rate doing those since 2013. And I was still doing my workshop. So, but here's what I was doing wrong. I continued to market to my list, but I had stopped strategically list building. And that was a huge mistake. That's the #1 mistake. Do not ever stop list building, ever. Okay, that is the life. That's the money. That's the lifeblood of your business. And I also, as I started doing #1 bestseller launches, I got well known for doing that. And then it got harder and harder to get people into my writing workshop. And as a creative, then I started to get really frustrated because I was doing the same thing over and over. And I was like, okay, what do I do? So over time, because I wasn't filling the workshops anymore, and that was frustrating, I stopped doing them, and I was doing more one-on-ones. So now I was doing one-on-ones, and I was doing all bestseller launches. So, and still writing books, and, trying to, again, just figure out, okay, now what do I do? And it's always been like that. Like, what do I do now? What do I do now? So, anyway, so I did that, and I was working with a client. I had taken my bestseller launches from $5,000 to $7,500. And one of my clients said to me, "This is insane. I mean, this should be twice as much money as you're charging for this." I mean, I worked with them, 6 months, holding them by the hand, lots of, right. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to charge 15 grand. So, I mean, and it's more than the bestseller launch, because with that, it's the publishing, it's the making sure the book's right. I mean, it's all the different pieces. It's, setting up the bonuses. So you're building the list. I mean, there's a lot of pieces in it. And so, so I did that. And so the next guy came along, and I asked for that, and he paid me $13,000. We took off $2,000 because he had his own web team, and I learned never take somebody else's web team because they don't know how to do it like we do it. Forget it, not doing that.
All in or no all.
Right. But anyway, I got paid that, and I was like, oh my God, right? People are willing to pay me for this amount of money. And so then it became, okay, well, that's great, but now who's my ideal client?
Your average order value went up, so you got to rethink all your demographics.
Exactly. You got to rethink all your demographics. You got to figure out, who, where are they? What are you doing? Rebranding, everything. So while I'm doing that, in the meantime, now I was really struggling, actually, because I wasn't getting enough clients, because my clients were by referral only. I mean, all my best clients were referral. Well, why was that? Because I wasn't list building. I wasn't doing the strategy. And all the coaching that I had over the years, it was like nobody figured out to tell me that that's what was wrong. So I'm sitting there going, what's wrong? And nobody was, and now it's so obvious to me, that, I mean, that you just don't do that. So anyway, so from there, one of my coaches who I had known for a really long time, and I'd gone in and out of his program because it was a lifetime thing. I can go in and out whenever I want. And he said, well, you should do a podcast. So, and I, scraped together the money to pay him because I was, it was like, yeah, I'd get a $15,000 client and it would last 3 or 4 months, but then what, So, I mean, it was hard. So I said, okay, I'll do a podcast.
So now we're talking product life cycle, right? Whether you're selling services or products, you have to figure out how to keep your pipeline full, right? And continually working on your next thing. And it's like part of your time's on your old business, part of your time's on your new business.
Exactly.
You got to keep flipping those hats.
Exactly.
So I'm following this story. I love this. So now you're going to podcast mode. Let's go.
So now I go into podcast mode, and he was the wrong coach for me for this. Like, he's telling me to do it the way he thinks I should do it. And so I start building the podcast. I spend 9 months doing that because I didn't have the money to pay somebody. And all of a sudden I go, this is so wrong. Everything's wrong. It's like, this isn't what I want to talk about. This isn't, it's just not what I want to do. Because his thing was, well, don't talk about the books, talk about internet marketing. And then some people will want to write a book. And I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. For what I'm interested in. Right. So anyway, so I scrapped the whole thing. I started over, and I'm telling you guys, guerrilla marketing, man, when you don't have the money, guerrilla marketing until you can figure out what is wrong, and I really want to encourage people, like, really get the right coach. I mean, even if you have to beg or borrow, not steal, get the right coach for what you want to do, because I got the coach I could afford at that time, and it was the wrong coach, and it cost me almost a year, doing that, rather than biting the bullet and putting it on the damn credit card, which is what I should have done.
So I like that mistake end there, where you didn't get the right coach, you didn't list build, you had a lot of misfires, you had challenges to overcome, but you came out of the fire somewhat unscathed.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was, now I started doing my podcast, Books, Business, Abundance podcast. And I started doing that in 2018. And I did it from October through Christmas and thought I'd start again in January. But then in January, I woke up and I was like, oh God, I seem to go through this every January. Like, it's kind of like refocusing and vision. And I don't do like, resolutions or that kind of thing, but I always kind of go through this thing every year.
Sure. You're
like,
always,
what do I want
you're evolving.
Yeah. Right. What do I want this year to look like?
I was talking to my mentor the other day about getting bigger versus evolving. And he said certain people just want to get bigger, keep doing what they're doing. Certain people just want to keep evolving. They don't care about their size. I'm one of the weird guys. I like to do both. I like to continually evolve and get bigger. And that's not easy. It means you're playing 100 poker hands. You don't know which poker hands got pocket aces, but man, you're playing 100 poker hands. All right.
Yeah. But anyway, so I did that. And then somebody came to me and said, there's this great course. It's only $100 and it's with Russell Brunson. It's called the One Funnel Away Challenge. Check it out. So I did, and it just completely made sense to me. So I went through that, and then a bunch of things happened with that. I had to have dental surgery twice. And anyway, a whole bunch of things, happened again, but I kept doing it. But I didn't want to really do my podcast again until I knew I was totally committed. And part of the fear about that was, like, it takes a lot of time and, or money, or whatever. You got to figure that out. Anyway, for some reason, around June of last year, I figured out I'm ready. And so I started doing it again. Now, what I have to say to people, though, is you have to understand, I'm a creative. I'm not a business person. And that is a lot of why I've done the things I've done. A lot of times it's been, I need to do this creatively, instead of making the best business decision. Okay. But when I really committed to the podcast, it was like, wow, I love this. like I can really get behind this.
Once you have that clarity, ability, and resolve, and they all line up, so your passion and your motivation are all synced. You're just going to bust content out. You're just going to you're going to be super successful. You put your unique ability and you spend time getting better at it. Makes sense.
And again, podcasting, starting out, it's slow. It's not something that happens overnight. But between the podcasting and then other things I was doing, just start, building my list again. And it's really funny because sometimes you're doing something over here and then something awesome happens over there. Like all of a sudden I got a new client and she goes, "Oh, I found you on Pinterest." Pinterest? I'm like hardly ever on Pinterest. So I went and I looked at Pinterest. It's like, you're getting 300 views a month on Pinterest. I'm like, oh my God.
That's great. That's great. Some of these things you don't even check out. All right. Well,
but it has to do with but you understand what I'm saying? The difference between being a business person and a creative person is hard because
going to resonate.
You need to keep yourself creative and still in the business. And that's really why I struggled, so many different times in so many different ways. And then it's eventually like bringing it all together and figuring out what's going to work for you.
So what I heard from you on our podcast today is you're a visionary and you use networking and people relationships to fill your integrator role, right? And so you paired your weakness on business building, but made a little slip because you got the wrong integrator on occasion, right? Same thing could be applied to any person's business, in my opinion. Sometimes if you're the ideas person, you're the visionary, you got to pair yourself with the integrator to get stuff done. Makes perfect sense. So last question for you. I would be amiss if I didn't ask this. What's the last book you've read, and what would you recommend it?
Well, I'm actually reading a couple books, right? I mean, right now I'm reading .com Secrets again, and I'm reading Traffic Secrets for the first time, both Russell Brunson books, because I'm really trying to figure out this funnel thing. And the last book that I read before that, I can't tell you guys yet because it's written by a client of mine, and oh my God, it's an amazing story. But I can't tell you yet till we launch.
So more to come. So if people want to follow you and learn the secret to that one here in the coming days, where should they go?
My website is booksopendoors.com, and there's so many things. I mean, I would just say go there and look around and stuff, because I mean we've got a Facebook group, we've got the podcast. I'm kicking my web guy right now, so I put some free things up on the website. Like he's dragging his feet. Like I said, it's a pretty new website, so we're still, it's not completely finished, but it's coming in stages. But
sure,
yeah. So yeah, that's it. It's the website, the podcast, and the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/self-publishing community.
Well, Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today. That was a great podcast on how to get a #1 bookseller on Amazon, and how to research and think through it.
I'm afraid we didn't tell them enough of the mistakes about Amazon.
I think you covered a lot of mistakes that are business in general advice. But
general.
We'll bring you back on for another podcast and talk more. More Amazon mistakes.
But I just really want to tell people, just keep going, just persevere. Keep being inquisitive. If you're a problem solver, if you love learning, you will figure that out. Sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes it doesn't. Just try to align yourself with the right people, the right relationships, and do your due diligence and work with people who know what the hell they're doing.
Well, those are words of wisdom. And again, Ellen, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll have to check out booksopendoors.com. Thanks again for joining. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. That's the My Amazon Guy podcast today. My name is Stephen Pope. I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy. If you're joining us from Ellen's audience and you are in need of any Amazon consulting outside of books, check us out at myamazonguy.com. Full Amazon service agency, everything from SEO, PPC, and design, all in-house.